The Success in South Florida podcast is brought to you by the team at Rawson Law Firm. If you need DUI or criminal defense representation, call the Rawson Law Firm at 754-206-6200 or check the description of today's episode for more contact information. The Rawson Law Firm, helping good people when bad things happen so they can achieve their best futures.
Welcome to Success in South Florida, featuring interviews with entrepreneurs, leaders, and other movers and shakers across South Florida to find out how they're doing their part to enhance the local community. Your host is Adam Rawson, the founder and CEO of the Rawson Law Firm. Adam's an award-winning attorney, former prosecutor, and a lifelong South Florida resident. He became an attorney because he believes in helping those in need and in crafting lifelong relationships in the community. This podcast is an extension of that mission. Let's get to today's interview. Here's Adam Rawson.
Welcome back to the Success in South Florida podcast. I'm your host, Adam Rawson. And on today's show, we have Patrick Findaro, who is I've known Patrick for a few years now. We were EO members, Entrepreneurs Organization members together. And Patrick is really interesting because he has, a few different companies, complete entrepreneur, world traveler, and just an overall really good guy and great business mind as well. So Patrick, pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Well, Adam, thanks for that intro.
Yeah. So, look, there's a lot to you. So I like to keep kind of my intro short in general. I like people to really just talk about themselves and explain, who you are. So before we kind of get into the journey, just who are you now and what are your businesses and what are you doing and what's your connection to South Florida?
Yeah, definitely. We can talk about the history, but moved down from New York City years ago to Miami. And I've been in the data information services space my whole career. And with my brother, we co-founded two businesses, Visa Franchise, helping investors and professionals move to the United States, as well as Vetted Biz, which is the biggest online directory database of franchise opportunities. And with that, we help all sorts of investors find the right franchise business, as well as get them funded. So I kind of have two hats, one in the immigration space, helping those investors and professionals, as well as in franchising. Really cool.
Really cool. And I'm sure there's even synergy between maybe the investor visas coming in to invest in maybe a franchise or some other businesses.
Exactly. Yeah. That was the nexus of our one company, Visa Franchise. For the first 6-7 years of that business, we started in 2015. It was just helping people invest in a franchise to get different visas, like the E2 visa, minimum $80,000. The famous one that everyone talks about, the EB-5, that's now right. $800,000. And there's another 3 visa categories that are not as utilized, but offer a path for certain citizens, as well as, depending on your background, to move to the U.S. through investing in a franchise.
Cool. Yeah, really cool. So we'll definitely get into those. But I want to know, let's talk a little bit about you. So where'd you grow up and what was life like growing up for you?
Definitely. Yeah. So I grew up right outside Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. I mentioned I work with my one brother. I have another brother in between us too. And sports were a big focus growing up. Played lacrosse as well as football at a lower level, but ended up playing a couple of years in college lacrosse. Yeah, sports were a huge focus in my upbringing, as well as we were fortunate enough in my teenage years to have a place in the mountains, as well as a beach house. So that piqued my interest in water sports, surfing, kite surfing, and that's what I really love doing today. And was a big draw of moving down here to South Florida, being able to kite surf, boat, and all those types of water sports. But grew up in Northern Virginia and then went away to New England, Maine for college, with a quick stop in New York, and spent a lot of time in Latin America as well, in exchange for a year in Brazil, where I picked up Portuguese, time spent in Argentina, as well as just a lot of business trips throughout my early 20s, and in particular to Latin America, where I was able to become pretty proficient in Spanish.
So that's really cool, because there's so many people who grow up in a place, go to school close by, and then live there and raise their kids there and never leave. And here you are, kind of this, not, this international world traveler. And so was that something from a very young age kind of sparked your interest, or did it take maybe after college and in the 20s to, have that love of, being in different places and experiencing new things?
I think pushed by both my parents for a love of travel. My dad's a lawyer lobbyist, would teach law school courses in Austria for 3 summers in a row when I was like 7, 8, and 9. And both my parents just loved traveling, and a lot of their savings went through to trips as well as education. So I was pushed from a young age to explore the world and be curious. Languages were always a big focus. And I went to Argentina by myself for the first time at age 16. So I spent a summer down there at age 16, and that was kind of like initiation to get out of my comfort zone and really helped form who I am today.
So you mentioned getting out of your comfort zone. So that's something that I learned maybe in my teenage, I'd say my teenage years too. And that's something that's always stuck with me. I believe the growth, personal and professional growth really happens when you get out of your comfort zone. So, did you learn it like back when you were 16? Was it just like, oh, I'm doing this trip, or did you kind of understand, hey, I'm pushing myself to do something different and make myself uncomfortable?
I don't think at that age it was a conscious decision. Well, I guess I didn't start thinking about these things until I was actually on the ground, like navigating trains and speaking like really broken Spanish at the time. So I think I was really, thrown into it, but I loved it and rise to the occasion with the challenge. And I think, with anything in life, there's always ups and downs, but when you're outside your comfort zone, not around friends and family, you're kind of forced to open up and
Right.
engage with people you wouldn't have normally connected with.
Grow or die, it's that's it, right? You have no other choice. So your dad, right, was, lawyer lobbyist and would travel, but did he really have an entrepreneur mindset? And did you guys grow up kind of in that mindset, or was that something that just developed, for you
Yeah,
and your brother?
good. Yeah, great question. I would say kind of a mix where my maternal grandfather was an entrepreneur. He owned a jazz club in New York City and Manhattan, a couple of locations, owned the real estate. And he was an entrepreneur since his early 20s. So that was definitely inspiration. And then my father's practice, being a lawyer, it's entrepreneurial in some respects, but I would say it's more akin to being a wealth manager, where maybe you're on a platform like Morgan Stanley or Wells Fargo, and they're providing kind of the admin and compliance support and the back end support, but you eat what you kill, and you
Right.
have your own book of clients, you're getting your own clients. So I would say it was kind of a hybrid throughout my father's career, but there were some times where it was more entrepreneurial than others. But essentially managing his own destiny, I saw where you have your own clients, and there's a firm to provide support. But at the end of the day, if you're not delivering, then you're not providing for your family.
Right. So he was kind of in more of that pseudo role. I know a lot of other lawyers are just this show up, let me work on cases, let me be the grunt, and then leave and go home. So your dad was not that level. But as far as the pure, entrepreneur, build something from scratch, lose it, build something again, sell it, build something again, not necessarily in that mindset as well, because he was also a very good technician in what he needed to do. Is that a good summary of
Yeah,
how
I
it
would say
was?
it's a good summary. And then for my maternal grandfather, it was kind of a long run where there was no, buying and selling. It was just a final exit with, selling the real estate to a big developer. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I would say, yeah, it's a good summary there.
Okay. And how close were you with that maternal grandfather? I mean, did you go to these clubs? Did you spend summers there with him? Did you get to see the operations? What part of it that really sparked your interest as a young kid?
I think it was more the stories because there was definitely a pretty big gap in age. I think he was in his late 70s when I was born, and he'd already sold the business. But hearing the stories about his career and just all the different aspects that came with being an entrepreneur, especially in the entertainment space, I think you have a lot. You have a lot of funny
Right.
stories
Yeah.
and a lot of characters
Yeah.
that come around your way. So it's
Any
just
stories
kind of
about
what
famous
we
people?
see. Yeah, definitely famous
Yeah.
musicians, and we see with Visa franchise that business. There's a lot of characters, people from 65 plus countries, and keeps it interesting every day. I'm sure it's kind of similar to your profession and the type of clients that you
Oh
have,
yeah.
that they're all very different and they have their own stories, and keeps it interesting.
Yeah, as you know, I'm always the one at a group or a party where we got stories and people, and just from what we do, people actually like hearing them. So it's great,
Yeah.
especially when my wife, with her being a prosecutor, when we're out together, it's everybody kind of gathers around and is like, wait a minute, you lock him up and he gets him out and tells, like, yeah, we see some things, and
Yeah. Now
nothing's
you're sharing that with the world, with your
right.
podcast and the YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so I always tell people that I'm like, for me, if I think I'm gonna get to the airport within 30 minutes of the flight taking off, I get anxiety. I'm stressed. I'm nervous. I'm sweating. I'm not nice to be around. You tell me you have a dead body in the trunk of your car, I'm cool and calm as can be. Okay, no problem. This is what we're gonna do. Like whatever, it's fine. Right. And it's just funny how, everything is so relative to what you do and, how you react. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, I love what we do. So now, Patrick, all right, so here you are, you're mid 20s, you're traveling, you're going to different places, learning new languages. And what was kind of, how did just these two companies get started? And how did you say, well, I guess I'm an entrepreneur, right? Like I guess, I'm starting and building businesses. How'd
Yeah.
that
So
journey come about for you?
I started my first job at 21 at JP Morgan at their headquarters, and it was very intense. Like, I know probably a lot of your listeners or people you've had on like work a lot of hours, but for a 21-year-old, and I was mostly speaking in Portuguese and Spanish, not my native languages, it was like a 7:30 to 7, 7:30 to 8 job, like very intense, a lot of money moving around. And that was not for me. It was a credit analysis role. I definitely think I'm more into business development, marketing, product development. So I saw that at that big of an organization and not really having control in the decision making, or not seeing a clear path, further along in my career within that organization. I didn't want to be part of a large company, and I made that decision like within the first month. And then it was like, okay, what's going to be the exit? What's the plan to move away from this, and all different types of ideas. And it ended up being, okay, I'm not ready today to start my own business, but I want to look at a smaller business. So I looked on LinkedIn, and I had discovered Miami on a 24-hour layover coming from South America back to New York at age 23. And within like 6 weeks, I moved down, just looking at jobs on LinkedIn with, putting in Portuguese as a search. This is back in 2012. And worked at an information services business selling data essentially to multinational executives, and was just there for, I guess 2.5 years. And one of the partners left, and you mentioned mentors. He's definitely a mentor, and he co-founded a fund that would lend money to franchisees, lend money to hotels. Like, they finance the surf side, Four Seasons, the surf club, sorry, in Surfside. And that what kind of opened my world to really entrepreneurship, being the third employee with just two partners, as well as the space of foreign nationals investing in the US with a primary objective of receiving residency here.
That's really cool. And so it was that 24-hour layover that changed the trajectory of your career and life forever, right?
Definitely. I thought people were living super well. Like, it was back when the real estate was really depressed and brickle. And for $1,100, you had an amazing studio where, with that much money in New York, you lived in like a cornered off, like living room, fake walls, no
Right.
windows. So You
So
just
where
seemed like
did you
people lived
go?
better in Miami and happier.
Right. So in that 24-hour period, where in Miami did you go where you were like, this is amazing?
Mostly bouncing around Brickell.
Okay. Just walking around,
I
like
think I
just
didn't
what,
even make it
walking
to the
around looking
beach.
at the buildings?
Walking
No, you didn't make it to
around,
the beach.
I had
So
some friends meeting their friends of friends, going to, rooftop, their pool, nice lunch. It was a great 24 hours.
right, good weather, you know. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That, yeah, that's really cool. Now, here you are in your early career, you're, data information space, and now you're more of the ideas, the marketing, right? So how do you balance the kind of that analytical data brain versus the creative brain? Because, what I've seen a lot is that it's rare, not impossible, but definitely rare to have both. I think I have both. That's why, I'm always kind of the idea guy and then this and that. But as the classically trained attorney, I have to look at things without emotion and sometimes without creativity and right analyze, just based on data and facts and arguments. So in your life, talk to me about that, as far as like which of your skills you use and how and why.
I think I have it's much easier to sell a product or solution that you really are very interested in. So it's like I'm very interested in what we do at Vetted Biz and helping people find out a deal franchise and kind of cut out all the fluff, because there's a lot of BS in franchising and charlatans in that space. So I am passionate about diving into the data and the information and then communicating those findings. And then same thing with Visa franchise and the network of immigration attorneys that we work with. There's always creative, interesting, new opportunities that open up, especially for investors and professionals, and just staying ahead of the curve. It's a genuine interest, both those businesses. And then in terms of marketing and sales, I just feel, alive when I'm having a sales conversation, when I'm, working on content. So I think if I didn't genuinely love, both of those activities, and especially on the product side, like at JP Morgan, I didn't love like going through these massive lines of credit where I didn't know who the individual was at all besides the name. I
There
didn't
was
really
like no
care about the
story,
stocks at all.
right?
That was really tough. That was a grind.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, to me, that there's no story, there's no person, real person behind it. That's why, you're just like a bean counter. And I mean, look, some people love
Yeah.
that, right? Some people are like, hey, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to worry about people. Just give me numbers, right? And they love numbers. And I like numbers, but I like, the numbers when they tell a story. And that's what we do is with everything that we do, it's about human beings and people and coming and different things that we can do. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely that duality that you have, that I have, that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have, and a lot of successful people have. It's definitely a different skill set, and it's rare. But when you have that, you can dive deep into the analytics with your, with an analytics or a data team, and you can also sit there with the marketing team and just daydream all day about, about different things and campaigns and other ideas and ways to
Because if you
generate
don't
revenue.
also, like, I think it's much better than prior to COVID being an employee. So if you just really like sales, like there's probably some company that you can get behind their product and you just focus on selling that. Or if you just really like the analytics and analysis, like there are a lot of companies that you could work in house or consulting that you could then understand how all these companies work, and you can be working remote
Right.
from your house, no commute. So I think COVID, it's really opened it up where the lifestyle of being an entrepreneur, it can be a grind at times, where it's like, depending on the week, it's like a 60-hour week, or maybe it's a 30-hour week. But being an employee, depending on where you're working, you don't have those variables, and the pay might even be the same. So I think in this post like work from home world, it's become less attractive to some degrees being an entrepreneur, and you've got to really love it. It can't be about the monetary gain,
Right.
because there's no guarantee that it's going to be better than sticking to your day job.
Well, that's what it should be, right? It should be about the love of it and not money. What did I hear? Oh man, I mean, this must have been like 10 years ago. I heard something saying when you're an entrepreneur, you'd rather work 100 hours a week for yourself than 40 hours a week for somebody else and maybe make the same. Right. It's just, it's just funny how that works. But yeah, it's definitely a mindset. And, there's people in the past who have made it sexy, made it cool, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. It's just, you got to do, I think most people out there need to really fit and learn about themselves, what makes them happy.
I think it's really important to like look beyond the headlines, because there are stories of people selling their business, but then you talk to them one-on-one about what the terms are, and it's more of an acqui-hire where they barely got their money back or barely got the investors' money back or didn't, and they're joining Google or joining some big technology company, but it wasn't really a win and it wasn't the intended outcome. And going back, being out of your comfort zone, I was warned about entrepreneurship when I was 22, considering my next step, by my neighbor, who was the president of a company that had a market cap above $1 billion. And last time I saw it trading, it was trading at like a 20 million market cap. Wow. So he
Nice
said,
company.
you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. If you want to do this entrepreneur thing, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that really stuck with me.
Right. Well, and so this will be the last thing that we say before we go to commercial break. But I've noticed that a lot in Rawson Law Firm over the last 3 years. We've tripled our growth. We've just, had tremendous growth, and we've changed our systems 2 or 3 times. We changed our software once, which was a major overhaul. And a lot of the people on our team, we have amazing employees, amazing, talented people, but they're the ones who not just don't like change, but they hate change. And I'm looking at it as, well, this is going to kind of suck for 3 months, but if we, this is going to make us better to go from 6 employees to 20, or this is going to,
you level up.
Right. And then we're going to have to change it again, or go, well, can we build the system now for 50 employees or 100 so we don't have to change it again? Right. So I look at change as a good thing. If we're changing, it means we're getting better. But especially when you have highly intelligent lawyers who are amazing technicians, people that, I will go to battle with my team. If I ever got arrested or in trouble, family member, it's my team all the way. That would have my back, and that we really make magic out there for people on their cases. But throw a little bit of technology change and things go haywire and people start freaking out and they get really stressed. And I'm just like, no, it's going to be better. Sometimes, you do have to take that step back to move 10 steps forward. And I think it's just a mindset issue. And again, being comfortable, just like you said, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I mean, it's just a fantastic way to put it. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a very quick commercial break. I know we have a word from our sponsor, the Rawson Law Firm. And when we come back, I want to dive deep into Vetted Biz Visa franchise and talk a little bit about your podcast. So we'll be right back.
When something bad happens, who do you turn to? In South Florida, the answer is the Rawson Law Firm. Criminal and DUI defense for when bad things happen to good people. The Rawson Law Firm is a team of 8 criminal defense attorneys, including 2 board-certified criminal trial experts. They also have federal and white-collar divisions in the practice. To learn more about the team and how they can help you, connect on Facebook and Instagram at Rawson Law Firm. You'll also find helpful and entertaining videos on Rawson Law Firm YouTube channel. Just check this episode's description for all the ways you can connect.
And we're back on the Success in South Florida podcast with Patrick Findaro. Now, Patrick, you are the owner of Vetted Biz and Visa franchise. And we've talked a little bit about both, but I want to go into some real detail on these. So which company started first?
Visa franchise back in 2015.
Okay. So you started Visa franchise in 2015. And was it you and your brother? Did you guys both start it together?
Exactly. My brother and I started it. He was working for the parent company of Burger King at the time. Restaurant Brands International that owns Popeyes, Tim Hortons, and Firehouse Subs, including in addition to Burger King.
And so, how did this really just come about between you and your brother?
At my prior company, we were just focused on one US investor visa category called the EB5. And I kept getting a lot of inquiries for this other visa category called the E2 visa, which instead of what was 500K at the time for EB5, now it's 800K. The E2 is like 80K minimum. And we had 50 plus prospective clients. And there was no interest from the company I used to work with to develop a product or solution to serve that unmet need, essentially. And that's when we decided we had a business, and we were roommates at the time, and we started it from our apartment. And 9 months in, Jack quit his job at Burger King and joined on full time.
Nice. So it was kind of something that you were seeing in your business every day. You saw the need, and then you brought your brother in. Now, do you guys have different skill sets and different talents? And how did you kind of decide
I
who
would
was
say
going to do
definitely
what?
different skill sets. I'm not so process oriented. I'm more, I like the sales, marketing, content aspect, and my brother is definitely more detailed and better at the financials. And so, yeah, we see business different ways, and it's quite complementary.
Right. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. I mean, that's the perfect way to do it, right? Is to start. And because obviously, systems don't mean anything if you don't have business. So, but you need the business. But then when you get the business, it's like, oh, okay, well, how do we make this faster and more efficient and make sure the quality control is there and customer service? So the fact that you guys each had those different unique skill sets is perfect. And I mean, so it took him 9 months to quit his job. How did things start going after that? Did you guys start kind of skyrocketing
From launching the website, we had a client in 2 weeks.
Okay, very nice.
And so it was like, we both invested, say, 20K into the business, and it was breaking even. It took a while for it consistently break even, because there were some months it was positive, some months negative. But say after 12 months, consistently breaking even month after month. And the big part of when he, jumped in was where we started seeing that product market fit. That could happen in a month for a business, or 5 years for other businesses. But there was that initial product market fit where it made sense to jump in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it seemed like right away. So that's fantastic. And what kind of did you guys have any early struggles, or did it just seem to take
Definitely.
off? So what were those struggles?
And it's something that I learn every day with franchising. It's not what it is on the surface. Like, once you really understand the franchise disclosure document, the financials that are presented, you vet that with current franchisees, with the franchisor, looking at litigation, bankruptcy. There's so much due diligence you can do on a franchise investment before you invest, or you advise someone to invest. So there were businesses that, looking back now, were not great businesses, and we thought they were good businesses. So having that top product, with my brother's expertise coming from the franchising space, definitely was a leg up from me, and was able to get us on the right track. But it took time, and I'm still always learning in that space. There's 7,000 franchises, and wow. For the first 6-7 years of our company, we were just focused on franchise investments. So we were able to see a lot of transactions, hundreds of transactions. Most of them have gone very well, and there have been ones that haven't gone well. And we do a postmortem and see what could have been different, if anything.
And so what have you seen as maybe the number one indicator of a successful franchise?
How much the owner makes and how long it takes to make that.
Okay. So obviously bottom line.
So the bottom line. So I'm going to do a video on a pet care franchise where they disclose EBITDA of being 2% in their financials. And the sales are 1.4 million, and all the ads say it's great unit level economics, but you go into the financials and they're horrible. Right. And the franchisee maybe makes 30K, 40K, and the franchisor is making maybe 100K from that franchisee. So when the economics are so out of whack that the franchisor is making a nice royalty, making money on products, technology fee, et cetera, he's eating into the margins of the franchisee. So that would be an example.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like in a way, they're almost, I mean, an uneducated opinion without diving deep, it seems like they're taking advantage of the franchisee. obviously you got to look back and see why are they taking those splits and all those things. But the whole point is, I mean, shit, you can just start your own pet store without
Exactly.
having to worry
But you can
about
buy an existing
that.
one that already has cash flow
Hmm.
or startup. So anytime someone invests in a franchise, it's like, what are the other alternatives? Can I do it myself? And I've spoken to very disgruntled, or quite disgruntled franchisees in the home care space, in restoration, that even though they're having issues with the franchise system, they've told me revenue would be like halved if they were just an independent mom and pop, because of the national relationships, because of the relationships with the insurance providers. So, there's always going to be issues between the franchisee and franchisor. You've just got to decide if those issues are worth the upside, or those prospective issues are worth the upside.
And so being involved with all these franchises, I mean, some have bigger brands and better marketing. Some have better, more efficient systems. Some, have better training. But is there something that you've seen across the board, consistently across the board, that, if a franchise has this, it's going to be successful for the franchisee? Have you seen any like big across the board correlations?
I would say if if the franchisee is able to just focus on certain functions of the business, so that could be just customer service and training employees, and the franchisor is able to help handle marketing, sales, vendor relationships. There needs to be like a really clear division of task, and the franchisor needs to do that super well. So if you have that, generally it's going to work really well. Like, giving an example, 1-800-GOT-JUNK franchisees average over $3 million in revenue with
Wow.
pretty healthy profit margins. And they have a call center where they basically do the bookings. And as a franchisee of that junk removal franchise, you're there to fulfill the job and manage your crew. So
That's
just do
it.
that,
Oh,
manage the
boy,
crew, and interact with the customer.
that's brilliant. Well, yeah. Well, and I've heard a lot about 1-800-JUNK actually and how good they are. I think through Cameron Harold. I know he was very involved and he's written some books now. So and I think he's been on the speaking circuit lately. So I follow him and I know he had played an instrumental role in that franchise. So okay. So basically, in a way, kind of front of house versus back of house. The
Yes.
back, right?
And
Get
another
the
another example would be Domino's, where they have a
okay.
pretty unique model where pretty much all their franchisees started out as employees. So it could be the delivery driver, it could be the manager at the Domino's, and the average Domino's franchisee, at least in the United States, is managing 8, 9 locations, and they're doing $160,000 of EBITDA. So you can
Wow.
imagine this driver who maybe was making 30K a year is now managing a company that profits over $1 million. He has 9 businesses. The enterprise value of these businesses is worth over $5 million. It's provided a system for middle class, even lower middle class, to reach the upper echelons in terms of income in the United States. And Chick-fil-A, similar model, a little different, where the split, the Cathy family, that's worth by our estimates over 20 billion, will invest and open up the Chick-fil-A, generally also owning the real estate, could be 2-3 million. And then the franchisee is asked to put in 10K. That's kind of like a good faith deposit to
Okay.
this, and he gets
Okay.
50% of
Wow.
the net profit. So that could be 300K, 500K.
Wow.
And again, I've interviewed a couple of Chick-fil-A franchisees, including one that started out as a cashier in Mississippi. Now he has a Chick-fil-A here in South Florida, and he's opening up his second Chick-fil-A in South Florida. So those are some examples of franchise models that it really works. And Chick-fil-A is handling the real estate, everything. They just want this operator to create a good team and make
Right.
sure his team follows the procedures. And then for Domino's, they're handling the tech, they're handling all the negotiations with Uber Eats. They've got to, again, just make sure that their team follows the standard operating procedures and
Right.
always be recruiting for more
Well,
more employees.
I mean, and Chick-fil-A is an amazing case study. I know their, profit per, I think it's either profit per square foot or profit per hour open is just absolutely dwarfs McDonald's. It's the most profitable fast food chain I think in the
Yeah,
world.
the sales
Um,
figures are on a different level. I think like a freestanding Chick-fil-A is like $8 million in sales, where McDonald's is less than half of that.
in 6 days versus
So you
7,
have, yeah,
right?
exactly. It's not even
Yeah,
open Sunday.
right. Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. So that's really cool. So you've been able to learn a ton about that. Now, what's on the horizon for Visa franchise with you before we get into even vetted biz and that?
It's been a busy year. So since March, we've launched 4 new products, 4 new services. And it's complex because we don't do all this in-house. We're working with some of the best immigration lawyers in the country to advise our clients. And there's a lot of moving pieces. But in addition to helping people invest in a franchise to obtain an investor visa or work visa, we also help people start their own business. So open up the company, EIN, business bank account, business plan, to apply for an investor visa like the E2 visa through their own business, and coaching them throughout the process, bringing in the advisors if they need a corporate attorney, immigration attorney along the way, as well as there's a few different offerings that we have for professionals that are highly talented, where we can act as their sponsor and serve as their agent in the US, finding them work, finding them different projects to work on. So there's a lot of technologists, for example, in Canada, the UK, that if they're able to move to the US, whether for some weeks or for a few years, they can make 2x their salary and pay pretty much half the taxes as they would be paying in Canada or the UK. So that solution has really hit product market fit quite fast, where we just launched that 6 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, that to me, that just seems like complete out of the box thinking of, hey, what else can we do in a similar, in this space that probably a lot of other people aren't doing. So that's really
Investors and
amazing.
professionals. That's who we focus on. That's it. If you're an investor or professional, we most likely have a solution for you to move to the United States.
Very nice.
Or
Very
if not, if we can't help you, happy to steer you in the right direction.
nice. Right. And as far as vetted biz, so that's the online directory. Explain to us, what vetted biz is and how that fits in the marketplace.
Yeah. So the business started, the impetus was that we had this offline directory from Visa franchise of like 2,000 franchise opportunities. And we thought, why don't we put this online and share it with the world? And that was in 2020, January 2020. And then a year later, we put up a paywall, and we were monetizing through selling the data through a subscription. And then we leveled on other ways to monetize the website through lead generation. We have a joint venture with a group that helps finance SBA loans. And a big point for the SBA, they recently changed their standard operating procedure, their SOP, to allow for refinancing, or much easier refinancing of SBA loans. So most people have a variable rate, prime plus 2.75, prime plus 2.5, where we have many banks that will bid for your business to offer, prime plus 2.1 or prime plus 2, where if you have $1 million credit facility, that can add up quite fast, especially in the environment that we're in now. So that's the principal focus on embedded biz and supporting with the financing and all different types of financial models for principally franchisees, but we're also going to be moving into entrepreneurs as well as people acquiring existing independent businesses.
Cool. Now you also have your podcast, so Franchise Findings. So how did that come about?
I was listening to this podcast, marketing school, and they do a podcast every day. And one of their episodes was that to really build an audience, you should release content every day. So this was in 2020, COVID hit. It was like April 2020. And I'm like, I'm
So
going to talk
very
about a
beginnings.
franchise every day. And then
Okay.
we'll bring on like a franchise founder once a week. So I don't do it every day still, but I'll interview a franchisee or a founder of a franchise system once a week. And then I'll report good or bad on a franchise. So that's usually a 5-minute snippet on a franchise. We're reviewing some of the best franchises, that are under $50,000, for example, or growing the fastest, and then interviewing a franchisee. They might have one location, might have 10 locations, and what's his story? How did he grow? And providing his insight for would-be franchisees as well as current franchisees that might be evaluating other brands to invest in.
Right. So here you are. It's April 2020. And what was everybody's options then? Buy an RV, stay at home and bake sourdough bread and put it on TikTok. I mean, right? What else were people doing? Not much.
There
And
was a lot of sourdough.
right. Yeah, right. It was good times. But so did you wait for anybody to give you permission to do this, or you just said, "Hey, I'm just going to do it and I'm going to put it out there because right now I
We
don't
did
really
it,
have
put
much
it
else
out
to
there,
do."
got a ton of demand letters when franchisors didn't like what we had to put out. But it's all based on facts. It's based on their own franchise disclosure documents. So we just put it out there on YouTube as well as all the different podcast channels. And we've been very consistent about that for the last, 3+ years now.
Right. And so how did that help grow the businesses?
We've become like essentially an influencer in the franchising space, where our YouTube channel has the most views for any channel that's producing franchise content. So it's opened up doors. It's allowed easy access to all different types of professionals in the franchising space. And I think it's become nice to be a node where we get inside tips now all the time. If a franchise is having issues, I'm usually hearing it from their current franchisees because they're upset and they want me to report on it. Sometimes I will report on it, other times not, but it's really helped the information flow to discover great, promising, maybe new opportunities, as well as share findings on franchises that aren't going so well. And there's about 30,000 people a year that are opening a new franchise location, and over half of those are existing franchisees. So there's about 15,000 people that are going to be entering into the franchise space, and they deserve to know the facts and not hear it from some biased salesperson. If you buy a franchise based on one of my videos, I have no affiliation with them, and I'm not getting compensation. If you go and buy a Domino's that I report on, or a Chick-fil-A, for example.
And I want everybody listening to this to really just take away the fact that you took action, and at the Rawson Law Firm, that's our third core value. One of our most important is you took action. You didn't wait for anybody to give you permission. You're not obviously afraid to rock the boat when you know you're in the right and you're not doing anything wrong and letting these bullies bully you. And from some of the people who X, I expect to get Y as a direct ROI or result. I would counter on this is you can't put an ROI on this, but the benefits are immeasurable, because again, one door opens to another door to another door. And before you know it, you have become this influencer, and the connections that you make, I'm sure the benefits have been absolutely tremendous to you, personally, and
Time will tell
professionally.
too. It's only been 3 years, and these videos, if we stop doing everything, we'll get 40,000 views. Who knows, for the next 5 years without doing much at all. So I think the time compounds, where 10 years from
Absolutely.
now, there's going to be a really big effect.
Right. Oh, absolutely. All right. So as we're going to wrap this up, Patrick, just have a few more questions for you that I ask, most of our guests. So what's your definition of success?
That's a great question. I would say you have to look at every facet of your life and define what your objectives are. I saw a recent study on like the list of the richest people in the world, and it was like 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 were divorced, and some were divorced like 4 times. So I think success is the whole picture, and not being happy, but living a fulfilled life, which I think there's difference between, being happy and just enjoying, leisurely activities and being fulfilled, where you're really helping your family, friends, business colleagues. And for me, I guess that's what defines success, where you have a life that you're fulfilled and that you're positively contributing to everyone that you're interacting with.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, do you love to win or do you hate to lose, and why?
I definitely like winning more. I'm not the most competitive. Like, I don't, besides playing lacrosse, I'm not in like to competitive sports these days. I definitely enjoy, a nice win, but a loss, like, especially if it's not if it's like for a sport these days, like doesn't really affect me much at all.
Okay. All right. So now, Patrick, where can people find you, and how can they get in touch with you if anybody has any questions or comments or is interested in, one of your two companies?
Yeah, definitely. I would say LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. Patrick Findaro at LinkedIn, the only one in the world. And then we're pretty active for both companies on YouTube as well. And we produce a ton of content. Last I checked for Vetted Biz, 750 videos in that 3-year span. So we have a lot of videos for Vetted Biz for a Visa franchise, but probably LinkedIn. And if anyone's interested, they can shoot me an email at patrick@visafranchise.com. And again, if I can help with something, awesome. If not, I'm pretty confident I can at least steer you in the right way if it's related to immigration or franchising.
Perfect. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. Learned a lot.
Thanks,
you're an amazing, talented entrepreneur, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.